Hello. Well, the Conservative MP Neil Parish has resigned after what he's called a moment of madness when he admitted watching pornography twice in the House of Commons. Well, it's certainly not what Conservatives want to be talking about in the week before those crucial local elections, which after a pretty rocky few months will undoubtedly be seen as a test of Boris Johnson's leadership. And that's not to mention the cost of living crisis, something our next guest will be acutely aware of. He's urging oil and gas companies to reinvest the bumper profits they're currently making to increase investment in the North Sea. We can talk now to the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Sophie.
I just want to start off by talking a bit about the culture in the House of Commons. As we just said in the introduction, more than 50 MPs apparently being investigated for sexual misconduct. We've, of course, had the case of the Conservative MP who's admitted watching pornography twice in the House of Commons. Is there a culture of misogyny in Parliament?
I don't think there's a culture of misogyny. I think the problem we have is that people are working in a really intense environment. There are long hours. And I think generally most people know their limits. They know how to act respectfully. But there are some instances where people don't, frankly, act according to the highest standards. And with Neil, I think he did the right thing. He did something which in most other professions you would be sacked for doing. And he voluntarily resigned. And I think his position was very difficult.
As you say, he has resigned, but there are wider accusations now. There's a wider look at what's going on in the House of Commons, not just one person. I just want to read you something from the Sunday Times. All the newspapers have this kind of thing this morning, but this is from the Sunday Times, talking about some of the allegations. A senior MP accused of repeatedly licking the faces of male researchers. Other allegations include staffers being groped in parliamentary bars by MPs, female parliamentarians being subjected to misogynistic nicknames, even claims a minister overheard having noisy sex in his office. I mean, what is going on? Have you seen any of this kind of stuff?
No, I've never seen any of it. It is extraordinary. And obviously it's completely unacceptable. And that's why we've set up, only 3 years ago, the Independent Complaints and Grievance Scheme, which allows people to go to an independent body and complain, make complaints, make serious accusations. Because, I mean, when I came in 2010, there was none of that. There was no recourse. All you could do was complain to the person you're working for, which in many cases would be the person who was, behaving badly.
On that, do you think that's something that should be changed? The Speaker saying today that he wants to look at the system where MPs directly employ their own staff, because you can see why it would be problematic.
Absolutely. So as I said, in 2010 we didn't have any recourse at all. 2018 we set up this Independent Complaints and Grievance Scheme, which allows people to complain to an independent body. And I think the Speaker and people like Dame Andrea Leadsom are very good, very clear that we need to see how we can improve the current situation.
To be clear, do you think that MPs should be able to directly employ and be responsible for the HR of their staff?
Well, it's not my view, not my opinion that matters in this. We've got the Speaker, we've got other people who are looking at the best practice.
An opinion, though,
Look, I think that generally most MPs have a sense of responsibility. And I've had the same PA for 12 years, and I have a sense of responsibility in terms of looking after staff. In some instances, I think people do act irresponsibly, and that's why we've got this independent scheme. And it's only been around for 3 years. It doesn't sound like a short amount of time, but it needs time to really get going. And actually, it probably needs more resource as well.
So you don't have an opinion then on whether MPs should be able to directly employ staff? I take your point that obviously the majority of MPs are fine, but the whole point is that you're looking at the people who have behaved irresponsibly.
Yeah, I'm not going to lurch to one conclusion or another. I think that what the Speaker said yesterday was that we should look at best practice around the world so that we can get the best system. So there are lots of different avenues, but clearly what's working, what we have now isn't working sufficiently well.
Another thing that some people are talking about is female representation in the House of Commons. Oliver Dowden, the Conservative Party chair, has told the Sunday Telegraph he wants to make sure, in his words, the party's candidates list reflects the fact that half the population are women. Would you like to see 50% Conservative women MPs?
I think we should have certainly a lot more female MPs, just as we should have more people from a wider range of backgrounds.
In the Conservative Party?
In the Conservative Party. Again, we've made huge progress. I mean, I remember when I was on the candidates list in 2003, there were no ethnic minority Conservative MPs. There's been a huge change in that, but clearly there's a long way to go.
Would you like to see all women shortlists?
I've never been a fan, frankly, personally, of quotas and shortlists. I've never really advocated that. But obviously we should do all we can to see how we can get more women and more people from diverse backgrounds into politics.
How about Parliament's bars? Is it acceptable that there are so many bars in the House of Commons? Should they be shut?
No, they shouldn't all be shut. I don't think we should have a kind of excessively puritanical, severe regime in that regard. I think, again, I would say people should be expected to act responsibly. And if they don't, we should have the process, the procedure, to make sure that people are sanctioned and punished.
I guess my issue is, listening to you, you condemn some of what's happened, and you say that we need to take action. I can't work out what action you think should be taken. You won't commit to saying it would be a good idea to look at how MPs employ their staff. You don't want to look at Parliament's bars. You don't want all women shortlists. What do you actually want?
So what I actually said, because you were trying to get me to advocate one particular...
I'm just trying to work out what you would like to change in Westminster in order to stop this kind of thing happening.
I think definitely we should look at MPs' practices. You asked me a specific question, and I said that's what we're looking into. I wasn't going to give you the answer, because that's exactly the question that we're examining. I think I've never been a fan of quotas, but I think we should do all we can to encourage more women to come into politics, and people from diverse backgrounds, from diverse professional backgrounds, from diverse ethnic backgrounds, and to reflect the diversity in our culture.
OK, thank you. I'm keen to talk to you about the local elections as well. Big votes going on, of course, across the country next week. What would success look like for the Conservative Party?
Well, look, we're going to fight for every vote. Clearly, in a midterm situation, there is a lot of pressure. I'm not going to give a number or say anything like that, but I think we're competitive. I think I look back at the 2012 local elections, which again were a midterm, very, very challenging. Frankly, at the moment, I think we do face challenges, but we're in a reasonable place. And I was speaking to constituents on Friday, and I think there's all to play for.
You say that there's a challenging situation. The latest Survation poll shows the Conservatives on just 34%, with Labour on 47%, so a big gulf there. And that, of course, would put some of those key councils at risk, places like Wandsworth, places like Bury, some of these flagship Conservative councils. Are you worried that you're going to be punished for, when voters look at what's happening in Westminster, that you're going to be punished for that at the polls?
In every local election, people vote on a variety of reasons, and sometimes people look to national politics. I think actually increasingly people do look at the local situation. You've got Labour councils such as Croydon, Nottingham, who went bankrupt. I think people are very aware of the fact that Labour is not generally a good custodian of public money. And Labour councils have gone bankrupt. So people will be voting on local issues.
How about in Scotland as well? Do you think Labour could overtake you to become the second party in Scotland?
I don't know about the situation in Scotland. I mean, I do follow Scottish politics very closely, but we've been competitive over the last few years in Scotland. We've done very well, actually, and I'm hoping that we can continue to do that.
So you think you might be able to hang on to the second place after the SNP?
Well, I hope so. I think that's what we're going to be fighting for.
OK. Now, we know, of course, that some Conservative MPs have lost faith in the leadership of Boris Johnson because they've told us that they're the only ones, of course, that we know about because they're the ones that have spoken publicly about it. The local elections next week are going to be seen as a key test for Boris Johnson's leadership. If you perform badly, could his leadership be at threat? I
don't think his leadership is at threat at all. I mean, what he's delivered is really a remarkable series of successes. I think Brexit, he delivered on that. I think the fact that he was very widely appreciated in Ukraine. He's been widely held as someone who's led the Ukrainian effort, the overseas effort to help Ukraine. And also look at the vaccine rollout. That was very, again, a great bit of success.
No matter what happens next week, no matter what the results are, Boris Johnson is safe.
Absolutely.
You better tell Jeremy Hunt, according to the Mail on Sunday, he's about to launch his leadership.
Well, Jeremy is a very capable colleague. He's a good friend. I don't know what he's up to, but as far as I'm concerned, Boris Johnson is the right man by far to lead us into the next election.
Are you concerned that what he's up to might be gunning for the leadership?
I don't know what Jeremy... I mean, you'll have to ask him. I don't know what his plans are. And also, there are lots of rumours in Westminster, and I wouldn't necessarily believe all of them.
OK. Now, if it does go badly in the local elections, you talk about the challenging picture. This may be why I just want to bring you this polling from YouGov, which hopefully we should be able to see. So people were asked which government would be better at regenerating areas outside of London and the South East. 17% said the Conservatives and Boris Johnson. 38% said Labour and Keir Starmer. Like, your flagship policy is literally to level up, and people just don't believe you're going to do it.
Well, it's one poll, and that's why we're going out to make the message clearer and more focused. And I think absolutely, if you look at what we're doing, if you look at somewhere like Ben Houchen's mayoralty in the northeast, Teesside, there's huge amounts of investment, billions of investment. Nissan, who told us they were reported to say that they were going to leave the UK after the Brexit vote, they've invested £1 billion. They've announced they're going to invest £1 billion.
You accept that the messaging needs to be clearer and more focused, do you?
I think we're absolutely always trying to make our message clearer and more focused, and we have a number of months to do that ahead of any prospective future election. We're absolutely focused to get the message out there, and the results are pretty tangible. I mean, you know, as I said, £1 billion from Nissan. We've got British Volt who are making batteries for electric vehicles. They've announced up to £2.5 billion in Blythe. These are important numbers, Sophie. This is really happening. People are actually looking at an economy that's creating jobs. They're very, very pleased about that.
They're looking at the economy and worried about their own budgets as well, aren't they? They're looking at inflation at 7%. They're worried about how they're going to pay their energy bills.
Absolutely.
When are you going to come back with an emergency budget?
There won't be an emergency budget. Obviously, that's something for the Chancellor, but he's
so you're
already
ruling
announced...
out no emergency budget?
It's not in my power to do that. You know as well as I do, and many of your viewers, that budgets are for the Chancellor. All I'm saying is that there's been considerable amount of support already. He's had a £9.1 billion package at the beginning of this year, and in the spring statement there was also a further £5 billion, up to £5 billion to support the most vulnerable customers and to support people precisely to deal with the cost of living.
So no need for an emergency budget then?
It's up to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. That's his job.
Your job is energy, of course, and business. You're urging oil and gas companies to increase investment in the North Sea. What's the idea? Well, the idea there is that they're going to be announcing profits. They're successful companies, and I'm saying to them, you know, it's great that you're British companies, you're successful British companies, but it's absolutely vital that you reinvest in Britain, particularly in gas, so that we have energy security. But also without gas, we're not going to get the new technologies. We're not going to get blue hydrogen, what they call blue hydrogen. We're not going to be able to do carbon capture, which is a key part of the new greener economy. And what happens if they just ignore you? And will you impose a windfall tax on them?
Well, I've never been a supporter of windfall taxes. I've been very clear about that publicly. I think that discourages investment. And the reason why we want to have investment is because it creates jobs, it creates wealth, and it also gives us energy security. So it's vital that companies invest in the UK. And actually, to be fair...
Are you on the same page as the Chancellor on that? The reason that I ask is Rishi Sunak said to Mumsnet this week in talking about the windfall tax, what I would say is that if we don't see that type of investment coming forward and companies are not going to make those investments in our country in energy security, then of course that's something I would look at, and nothing is ever off the table in these things.
So he's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. He's responsible for tax policy. From my point of view, I want to see investment in the North Sea. I really want to see these assets developed, and also driving new technologies which are going to green our economy, which are going to reduce carbon emissions, technologies like carbon capture. And in order to get that going, in order to get jobs, in order to get people working in these exciting new technologies, we need investment. And that investment is going to come from the private sector. It
sounds like you want to rule out the idea of a windfall tax, but the Chancellor doesn't want to do that.
My own view is that, and I've said this publicly many times, a windfall tax will act as a disincentive to invest. And we want to see investment. We want to see developing our own assets, not only for jobs, but for energy security. OK, thank you very much for being on the programme. Thank you.
Kwasi Kwarteng there, thank you.